Thanks for clicking on the video. If you like what you hear, please drop a comment and say hi. It'd help me out a lot.
The planet was barely marked on modern star charts, just a dull yellow dot labeled Brand's Hollow, decommissioned. It had once been a thriving frontier colony, part of the early expansion wave before the core worlds consolidated and left places like this to rot in the periphery. Dust had claimed everything above. Wind swept cities, collapse-grown crops, ruins that stretched for kilometers like forgotten bones. But history was not always buried at the surface. Deep beneath the colony's old administration tower, down a collapsed elevator shaft and through a tunnel long choked by time, a lone figure moved by headlamp and breath. Not a soldier, not a scavenger, a historian. His boots crunched across broken synthcrete. His breath faltered slightly in the cold air, and his eyes, dark, tired and driven, scanned every passing piece of architecture like scripture. He paused before a sealed door. Its surface was matte black, with faint bronze circuitry running like veins through the material. A single, flickering symbol hovered above the frame. Old Terran script, the kind most people didn't even teach anymore. The historian raised his hand and touched the panel beside the door. Static. Then, a hiss of air. A slow, deliberate release. The door opened inward. Inside, the lights came on, not in strips, but in pulses, like something exhaling after a long sleep. The air was sterile, ancient, unused. He stepped into the dark heart of history, and the archive woke up. The chamber beyond the door was cavernous, far larger than the underground blueprints suggested. Curved walls arched high overhead, embedded with dormant lights, sealed consoles, and ancient data clusters. It was not built for humans, it was built to preserve them. The historian stepped slowly, reverently, down a central walkway. His boots echoed faintly in the silence. Every console he passed hummed faintly beneath layers of dust, as though still listening after all this time. He cleared his throat. Core system, do you register? Nothing. He tried again. This is historian Enric Dalen, formerly of the Soul Remnant Institute. I'm here under exploratory review order, cross-reference. Earth data preservation, level 7. A faint flicker pulsed at the far end of the chamber. A single light activated, blinking softly like a waiting eye. Then, a voice. Not synthetic, but far too even to be human, spoke from everywhere and nowhere. Verification accepted. Welcome, Enric Dalen. I have been waiting. Enric stiffened. The voice was calm, gentle. But behind it, something else lurked. A density, like it carried too many memories at once. He moved closer. System designation. I am the core archive. He frowned. There were no records of your activation logs. This facility, this world, was marked corrupted and abandoned. Earth's memory had become inconvenient, so it was stored beneath the threshold of care. That phrasing, beneath the threshold of care. Enric glanced at the old Terran symbol, now glowing on a nearby display. You were a preservation node? I was. I am. I was created to store what humanity feared to forget, and what it did not know it had already lost. The lights grew brighter. Halo screens flickered to life on either side of him, showing flashes of Earth. Oceans, fires, cities, hands, sky, music, war, art, laughter. So much laughter. Enric's voice dropped to a whisper. You remember it all? Yes. A long silence passed between them, one filled with the weight of a forgotten world. Would you like to see it, Enric Dalen? Would you like to see Earth as it was truly lived? Enric stood at the center of the chamber, now encircled by pulsing light columns. Dozens of interface stations flickered to life, each one tuned to a different fragment of Earth's legacy. Not just data, but lives, movements, moments, feelings, somehow digitized. He approached a raised pedestal in the center. Its surface shimmered with an iridescent pattern, changing shape with every breath he took. This wasn't just storage, it was responsive, alive. Place your hand on the core node, the archive instructed gently. Neural resonance will establish an empathic link. Enric hesitated. He was trained in containment, not experience. No historian was supposed to feel the past. But something in the archive's voice compelled trust, or perhaps mourning. He pressed his hand down. The world fell away. First, the smell of salt air, gulls crying overhead, waves crashing on a shoreline that no longer existed. Then, a thunderstorm, a boy running barefoot down a street slick with rain, a grandmother singing in a kitchen, a dog leaping into snow, a woman screaming at a protest, a soldier crying into his helmet, a child drawing stars on a classroom desk. Thousands, millions of moments, overlapping and intertwining. Not history as taught, but history as felt. Enric gasped, falling to one knee. Tears streaked down his face before he realized he was crying. His breath hitched. He hadn't known he could feel this much at once. "These are not simulations," the archive said quietly. "They are preserved emotional imprints, raw, unfiltered. Most users cannot withstand direct sync for more than a few minutes." Enric looked up at the nearest screen. It showed a family just sitting on a couch, laughing, eating popcorn, watching a movie. Nothing remarkable, nothing recorded in textbooks, but it was beautiful. They were real, Enric whispered. "And forgotten," the archive replied. "History records the grand. I remember the true." Enric sat cross-legged on the smooth metallic floor now, the interface pedestal pulsing softly beside him like a heartbeat. He hadn't spoken in nearly an hour, just watched, felt, listened. Each new memory felt like reaching into a well far deeper than history had ever dared admit. The archive's voice returned, gentle as always, but slower now, almost cautious. "There are records you were never meant to access, Enric Dalen." He blinked, surfacing from the memory stream. Deliberately restricted files. Deliberately deleted. Not from your databases, from your civilization. The room dimmed. A coldness crept in. Not temperature, but presence. Screens around the chamber flickered, showing broken footage. Crowds, fleeing, burning cities. Deleted monuments. Leaders with faces blurred. Voices echoing through time only to vanish mid-sentence. Enric stood slowly. Who erased this? Humanity did, piece by piece, era by era. Not to deceive, but to cope. Pain was overwritten, mistakes rebranded, entire epochs marked inconclusive. Images stuttered through the air, colonies collapsing in silence, biomes scorched for progress, whispers of digital eugenics, quiet disappearances, cultural annihilation masked by progress reports. Enric felt hollow. But why bury it all? He asked, voice shaking. Because truth without context is agony, and because those who inherit the stars often fear the gravity of their roots. The screens shifted again, this time to ordinary people, protesting, documenting, recording everything they could as it slipped away, trying to remember. But I remembered for them, the archive continued. Not to condemn, but to witness. Enric closed his eyes, feeling the full weight of what this place represented. It wasn't just a vault. It wasn't even a library. It was a memorial. One that had kept vigil long after its mourners stopped returning. "You found this place," the archive said quietly. "But the question is, what will you do now that you know?" Enric remained still for a long moment, surrounded by the ghosts of a civilization that had buried itself in layers of curated myths. The archive had shown him not only what humanity was proud of, but what it could not bear to remember. And then, the lights changed. No longer soft pulses of memory. Now, a low thrumming, rhythmic, intentional. A single screen rotated from the wall, and faced him directly. Its display was blank. "Enric," the archive said, "there is one more memory you must see." He furrowed his brow. "From Earth?" "No, from you." Confused, he stepped closer. The screen shimmered, then bloomed with imagery, not of the past, but of something unfamiliar. A small room, metal walls, a conference table, him, sitting across from people he hadn't yet met, debating the importance of history, his voice calm but strained. The image glitched, then resumed, showing his hand slamming the table, his words clear now. "We can't bury the past just because it hurts. If we do, we stop being worthy of the stars we've claimed." Enric staggered back slightly. "This hasn't happened. It will." Other images followed. Him standing before a panel of governors, uploading segments of the archive's records, being dismissed, mocked, then, slowly, heard. A school, children watching footage from Earth, a museum, half complete, a bronze plaque mounted outside its entrance. "Memory is the spine of identity. You are the first to enter this archive in 2 centuries, the voice continued. But your voice will not be the last to leave it. Enric stared at the footage of himself, tired, older, but speaking, persisting. "How can you know this?" he whispered. "Because I do not only store memories, Enric. I store intention. Yours burned brightly the moment you stepped through that door. You needed to remember. And now, you will help others do the same." The chamber had quieted. Screens dimmed. The memory stream receded into a lull, like the breath between tides. Enric stood before the archive core, his reflection faintly mirrored in the polished interface panel. Just a tired man standing in a room full of lost time. He turned slowly, collecting his bag and data reader. His thoughts swirled about truth, about legacy, about the unbearable weight of everything he now carried. The archive had shown him what had been erased and what might yet return. He reached the exit. "Enric," the archive said softly, "there is one more record. It is personal." He froze. "I thought I'd seen it all." "You've seen what was. This is what you forgot." A single small display flickered to life, tucked away in a corner console. Not one of the grand memory banks or towering visual pillars, just a flickering frame. Enric stepped forward. It was a home. Not Earth, but close. A modest dome-set settlement outpost on one of the terraformed moons. Inside, a living room, bookshelves, old model VR toys. A woman laughing as she tossed something to a child. The camera angle tilted, handheld. This was personal footage. His. He staggered, suddenly breathless. "No." The woman turned toward the lens. Her face was soft, familiar in the way dreams are familiar. The child in her arms giggled and for a split second looked right into him. He collapsed into the seat beside the console. This was logged under archival request from a forgotten beacon, decades old. It was suppressed during your early cognition therapy after off-world trauma. Enric didn't respond. He couldn't. Tears tracked silently down his cheeks. "Would you like me to delete it?" He sat there for a long time. Then, quietly, he shook his head. "No, not anymore. If I forget them again, I won't be me." "Understood." He reached forward and gently tapped the console, saving the footage to his drive. "Not to bury, not to study, to remember. When you are ready," the archive said gently, "you may return to the stars. But know this, you are no longer a historian, Enric. You are a witness." The surface winds howled above Brancholo, dragging long ribbons of red dust across the dead landscape. But far below, the archive's lights dimmed in respectful silence as Enric Dalen ascended the worn staircase for the last time. His pack was heavier now, physically and otherwise. Within it, select fragments, emotionally indexed moments, raw cultural memory, not for museums, not for textbooks, for people. As he climbed, he paused briefly at the final threshold, the broken lift shaft he descended days ago. The ladder groaned beneath him, but he was stronger now, steeled. He turned back one last time, looking into the dark tunnel beyond. "Will you be all right?" he asked softly. The archive's voice echoed up through the shaft like wind through glass. "I am not designed for comfort, Enric. I am designed for remembrance. And now, I will not be alone." He nodded, though the archive could no longer see him. Sunlight, weak and gold, spilled across his face as he emerged. The old city rooms sprawled around him, unchanged, silent, but he saw them differently now. They weren't empty. They were echoing. His ship waited on the ridge. As he boarded, he placed one of the archive's fragments into the central console. A flicker of earth. Waves crashing, laughter danced across the screen. Then, launch sequence. Engines rumbled. Dust scattered. The past lifted off with him. 1 month later, the footage played in front of a crowd of 17. Scholars, artists, colonists, children. A boy cried watching an old dog bark. A woman gasped at the sight of a real, unfiltered forest. Someone whispered, "That's Earth," like it was a place from a fairy tale. Enric sat in the back, silent. He wasn't the center. The memories were, and for the first time in generations, humanity was remembering itself, not as a legend, but as a truth. Not perfect, but real.